Hi, I'm recording this on November 6th, the day before N7 Day, because I've been thinking a lot about Dragon Age Veilguard and about the way fandom specifically has discourse, especially over politics. And I'm really frustrated because I think there's a lot of bad faith arguments and critiques. One of the most popular videos on Veilguard was during the pretty mediocre release trailer they did. Not release trailer, promotional trailer. One of them that got so much backlash because, frankly, it was a bad trailer. Asmongold specifically, famous for getting banned from Twitch more recently for gently advocating for genocide, uh, did a whole hit piece on it. And honestly, a lot of his critiques about the trailer were totally valid. It was a bad trailer. A lot of people hopped on it, and it's interesting to see the lack of critical thinking. Because I think it's very possible to critique something and say that's bad without creating a boogeyman. I've also played Halo games, and as someone who's been in that fandom, I can tell you from firsthand experience, one of the major complaints is the lack of consistency of art style between games. Dragon Age has a bit of that. You know, you look at Origins to 2 and then 2 to Inquisition, and then finally Veilguard, and like even just like the armors and weapons change dramatically. There's a lot of stuff that stays consistent, but the inconsistency bothers a lot of people. And I've been playing Veilguard. I've been enjoying it for the most part so far, you know? Mass Effect and Dragon Age mean a lot to me, which is why I'm going to be releasing this on November 7th. But being so frank with y'all, the Dark Spawn look goofy. They look bad. I am not a especially talented artist myself. I want to be respectful with my critiques, but I would be embarrassed to be the artist credited with those designs for this specific series. Um, I I would avoid putting it on my resume to some degree if I was deeply invested in Dragon Age itself. And I do not blame the artists, knowing that people walked off the project over the course of its 10 years for a litany of reasons. We're not privy to all of it, but I can already imagine. There was Late Night Gaming did a great series of videos on this with the Halo franchise where like he speculated that somewhere there was some artist who made a great design and some corporate executive was like, "No, these don't work. Make 20 more of these. And we'll see if one of those works." And Matt Colville has done a great video about the idea that like sometimes it's not necessarily about just doing what works or what makes the best game or even what makes the most money. Someone somewhere is like, that design is from an other game, from some other developers, art teams, from some other executive. That's not the way I want to do it. Do it differently. Do it the way I want. You know, whatever the reason is, the Darkspawn look bad. Like they look goofy. They don't look like Darkspawn, and the designs themselves aren't even necessarily so bad that they couldn't work for something else in either some other game or somewhere else in this game. It's frustrating because a lot of the demon designs uh, look kind of interesting as like, oh, this is the spirit version of this demon. But it doesn't remind me of the demons and how genuinely intimidating and frightening and disturbing they looked in Origins or even in Inquisition, where the demons looked fantastic, I think. Like in Inquisition, they kept a lot of the same demon designs. Some of them they didn't keep, like the Desire demons, probably because they were sort of a product of 2009. But I don't even think they were bad designs, you know? It's curious they didn't use them for anything. And a lot of people seem to think, like, it's social justice's fault. It's the fault of liberals and like whatever. Or a lot of people just avoid critiquing it entirely. And I think those are both different forms of bad faith argument. It really bothers me um, because I think we're all capable of better critical thinking. I mean, I'm coming to you from the states, so maybe take that with a grain of salt. Um, but it's it's something I wanted to talk about, even though I am not an influencer. My YouTube videos aren't good content, and you know, I'm no expert. I've done design development for Dungeons and Dragons books, including Galdur's Gazetteer. You can see on the shelf behind me, and that's about it. It's a TTRPG, not a video game. So, I'm no expert. But I wanted to throw my hat into the ring because this story of these two sort of sibling games, Mass Effect and Dragon Age, they mean a lot to me. I really like Baldur's Gate, um, and the story therein, the combat, all that stuff. And Baldur's Gate 3 just crushed it. And Veilguard is being compared to that in a lot of ways unfavorably, and fairly so. Baldur's Gate 3 was a game of the year. You know what else was game of the year? Dragon Age Inquisition. It is strange to me how many people dunk on Inquisition when it's just frankly a really good game with a really compelling, dark, interesting story. Um, Benjamin Yahtzee Croshaw said that it was his favorite of the three games, Inquisition, Origins, and 2, which should have been called Dragon Age Exodus, but anyway. Um, and a lot of people are saying like, oh, where are we going to see the next Origins? Like, if you want to see the next Origins, I mean, probably play Baldur's Gate 3, not Dragon Age. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, like, Origins is great. Like, try Awakening, the expansion, if you haven't done that yet, because it's genuinely a good continuation. It's short, but it's more and better Origins. They really refined some things and kept some of those things from Awakening into other games. Um, these franchises mean a lot to me, and a lot of people have made the critique like, oh, whenever you talk to companions, it's like HR is in the room, and I'm like, it's true you can't really be evil. Is that a missed opportunity? Yeah. Um, I think partly they looked at the data from Mass Effect and Dragon Age and saw that even though some of the Renegade options are absolutely not only just funny, but like some of them are just like genuinely compelling and interesting choices, the vast majority of players chose Paragon. And I think it was a mistake to then be like, oh, well, we should only have those sort of like positive takes, those only like sort of heroic moments. Um, I think you lose something there, but I understand why that's the conclusion they made. I haven't finished the game, and I think my thoughts will definitely change over time. Not everything's positive. I think the combat is great. Genuinely, I like the idea of Veilguard combat in a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where it's not turn-based, it's like, you know, tactical with some of those elements. I think there's certainly improvements that can be made on the Veilguard system. But dude, the currency system, like the way that the factions are functioning right now, the way that the combat actually flows, and story choices have consequences on the mechanics of the game. I don't want to spoil too much, but like hardening a companion has been a mechanic in all three games of the Dragon Age games. And the way they do it in this game, I think might be my favorite. I think it's excellent. Yeah. Um, I had an experience at one point when I was in between jobs and desperate for employment when I briefly considered joining the U.S. military. Uh, I like the idea of doing good in the world and being part of something larger than myself, and figured that they might take me because am in decent shape and am a decently intelligent guy. I like to think. Um, I went to the office, had a 2-hour conversation with the recruitment officer, and took their test, scored, according to them, decently high on it. Um, and as I was leaving the recruitment office, I saw teenagers who had not finished high school. Like, I overheard their conversation a little bit. They were like 15 or 16, and they were trying to join. And any other organization in the world that is child labor at best, and like just creepy exploitation at worst, you know, that is horrendous. And I thought, what the hell am I doing here? And I thought about the sort of mission, the sort of themes I get from Mass Effect and Dragon Age a little bit. Uh, and the idea that you can do good as a diplomat warrior, as one of so many different things, right? You can do so much good in the world without having to necessarily resort to violence as like a theme of those games. Even though by and large the way you solve most of the problems is by fighting things and whatnot. So, uh, I decided to become, you know, something else. More specifically, continue my time in education as I'd had some education gigs and I became a success coach. And now I help guide high schoolers to make, informed choices about their career and where they want to go after high school, whether that's continuing their education or finding an occupation that suits them. And that may or may not include the military, but I want that choice to be informed and one that they make when they have enough life experience. Um, I have a lot of respect for people who serve, but I don't want them to end up getting exploited. Um, that's my 2 cents. You don't have to agree with it. I'm just throwing my hat out there. I'm not Asmongold or Angelic Katosh or whatever her name is. Her video on why she only plays older games. As someone who likes to play older games, I still go back to play Origin sometimes, and 2, and Inquisition, which is an older game. It's 10 years old, you know? Um, but her video, I saw that and I was like, she was like, "Oh, I'm not a pick me, these are just my thoughts and feelings." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, you're not a pick me, you're just racist." Well, sorry if that bothers you when I say that. Because, like, I watched that video going in, like, "Oh, yeah, I like older games. They're a comfort zone for me, too." And then her points, and I'm like, I mean, the point specifically, oh, Japanese people aren't going to want to play as, like, a person of color. They're not going to want to play as, like, a dark skinned dude, you know? And then she points at some kind of racist reactionaries from Japan. And then I see other reactions from other Japanese people who are fine with it. And also, you can play as a Japanese person in that game. The arguments were so bad faith. I mean, I don't know. I'm a nobody compared to her channel following, and I get the idea of playing the game. Sometimes you accept the endorsement from a person like Asmongold because you want your channel to grow. Um, but yeah, I don't think she's a pick me. I just think she's racist. Like flat out. Or at least she's saying racist things. Like, and if you don't think it's racist, I'm not worried about you being bothered by that. I'm not looking for a channel following. I cannot play the game. Ginny D is a content creator who, in a lot of regards, I have a lot of respect for. Um, why? Because she is a blue-haired liberal? No, because she makes interesting content about TTRPGs, and she also knows how to play the game. You know, she accepted a kind of endorsement for her like calendars, her pinup calendars, from Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon, you know, is someone who a lot of people see as a pariah. He's got a lot of faults. Uh, Jenny D knows how to play the game. I get it. Sometimes, instead of being like, this is evil and wrong and bad, and what this person has done is evil and wrong and bad, um, people will, for one thing, they'll point at a person and say, this person is evil and wrong and bad. And sometimes, like, you sort of, jump to that conclusion rather than being more thoughtful. Uh, and other times, someone who is in many ways anathema to some of your core ideals and beliefs, or maybe isn't necessarily anathema to them, but you can compromise on a couple of things there, and they give you an endorsement, and you take it, and you appreciate the increase to your audience, and potentially increase to your revenue, because that's how you play the game. I get it. It's not one I could play well. I do not have the politicking skill for it. So, with Dragon Age, the reason I'm making this video and that I'm fairly harsh, I think I might have been a little over harsh, and I'm not going to take that out. The look of the Darkspawn and even many of the demons is bad. I think a lot of people reacted poorly to how the companions looked and the general art style. I think it's fine. Like, it looks decently good. Like, dang, dude, it looks better than Origins. Come at me for saying that. Origins, a 15-year-old game that was rushed, that had many of its art concepts and designs cut, where some of the coolest lore armors in the game, like the Battle Dress of the Provocateur, don't look good without mods because they just look like any other standard set of armor in the game. Like, it hasn't aged well. I don't know what to tell you, you know? Veilguard looks way better than Origins, with the exception of some of the designs. The Darkspawn, I think, really looked good in 2 and Inquisition. But I feel like something was lost from the sort of orc zombie vibe they had in Origins. And that's sad because Darkspawn have been terrifying. With this fandom and how much it means to me, right? Mass Effect and Dragon Age. I think it's really important to remember the sort of themes they're in. You know, I think a lot of people are missing that and like not critically thinking about it. The way Origins opens up, if you love the Grey Wardens, I mean, for all the critiques that in universe are levied against them as an organization, because they are not perfect, but their core themes and ideals, I think, resonate with many of us, right? Even if you're one of those oddballs who's like, I hate the Grey Wardens, but I love Dragon Age. That seems strange to me. But you know what? Fair. Point is, right? Uh, the whole speech that Duncan makes at the beginning, right? Until the Grey Wardens came, men and women of every race, warriors and mages, barbarians and kings, they sacrificed everything to fight the Darkspawn, and they prevailed. Chills, dude. It resonates with many of us emotionally, you know? Like the themes of these games, the idea of coming together, people of differing political ideologies, ethnic backgrounds, races, and sexes coming together to fight a greater evil, to fight against ignorance, to fight against something that is, in many ways, worsening a division in a fundamentally broken world, right? Resonates enough that, you know, I got this after I decided not to join the military as a symbol, right? N7 does not just apply to this one special forces group. N7 evolves to be something worn as a banner to show the sort of like special, like, you know, joint task force training that everyone who chose to fight the Reapers wore. At least like as a rallying cry, because N7s were best at doing joint training. The N7 armor shows unity. The first time we see it on someone who doesn't have N7 training is when we see it on a Geth, the unit who isn't an enemy, is an ally, when in the first game they'd exclusively been enemies. Because the division that is sown between us by bad faith actors causes us to be less able to fight a greater foe. And that's really frustrating because I would think the people who care so much about Mass Effect and Dragon Age would have this keenly, you know, would be keenly aware of this concept, right? Of fighting the greater evil together, even with people you don't normally agree with, right? And I feel like, you know, using some sort of Malcolm Gladwell Freakonomics right here, I think it drives people towards very extreme ideologies, many of which encourage you to like view minorities and disabled people and you know DEI or whatever as a threat, as an other, as something that will just by existing will worsen the writing of a game, will make it like less enjoyable for you. Like it's like, oh, they're subjugating white men or whatever. And I think that's inaccurate, you know? Like I think there might be some cases of that, but I don't think Dragon Age the Veilguard is one of them. You know? Um, I think the whole point is that we come together to fight a greater foe. That we all come together as people fighting for a united goal, a united cause. That we are stronger together. And Grey Wardens would accept anyone who's willing to fight the Blight. They'd conscript people too. If they were infected by the Blight and had no other options, or if their joining the Order would be a net positive for the world, and that it would end the Blight. So, some of the bigotry that I've seen in this fandom, because people are frustrated by the direction Veilguard has taken, is unacceptable. And I am someone who can hear the actual good faith arguments in some of the larger discourse and say, yeah, you're right. I think BioWare, if they don't have, a direct official mod support added at some point, should make it a priority to update the game so that there are options to restore Darkspawn designs from other games. I know that would be a ton of work, but these designs do not look good. At least not for Darkspawn and Demons, which is sad because like the Blight corruption itself looks excellent. You know, that's like it reminded me of the Flood in Halo again. It's really frustrating that so many aspects of the art design in this game are so good, but not the enemies that you're supposed to take seriously, that are supposed to be a genuine threat to the world at large. That ogre scene in the Tower of Ishal in Origins still gives me chills. Or the ogre scene in 2, right? Oh, or the emissary in Inquisition. Dude, if you've played the Descent for Inquisition, those emissaries, they look so good. That is exactly what Darkspawn emissaries are described to be in like the books and stuff. Like, yeah, you can see it has Hurlock or Genlock influences, or Shrieks or Ogres in some weird cases, right? But those are more rare. Generally speaking, the emissaries are Genlock or Hurlock, and they look like the Xenobites from Hellraiser. They're just terrifying. The only Darkspawn that can speak, like communicate, and that's mostly to order other Darkspawn, like commands, like basic language. And because of that, some of them can cast spells, and they're terrifying. And I love that. And in this, the ogre looks goofy. It looks bad, really bad. And like the thing is, I think some of the Hurlocks in this game look alright, if with some tweaking. But I wanted to cover all my bases, prove that yeah, I care about this franchise enough at least to get this tattoo. I want very much for people to come together and, just realize that we are stronger if we come together despite our differing beliefs to fight a greater foe. I think viewing this game as I don't know, a herald of a threat from others, from people who don't like the plea. I think reacting like, oh, of course Rook in the promotional trailer is black. You can customize your character. Like, it just really bothers me, the arguments people are making, because, I mean, forget poking holes in them. I feel like oftentimes the argument reveals more about the person making the argument. It's not an argument. You're just revealing something about yourself, And you got to do some self-reflection, some actual critical thinking. Man. I don't have great video editing skills. I think 25 minutes is a good place to leave this video. In peace, vigilance. In war, victory. In death, sacrifice. Peace out.